Hi there. This is a conversation I had with Matt Porwoll about owning gear. We talked about buying gear, about what gear we like to buy and what gear might not be a great idea to own, and also about how we handle billing clients for the gear we own. We covered a lot of different topics. I'm Ben Bloodwell. I've been shooting documentaries and documentary-style commercials for the last 18 years. And just recently, I've started conducting these casual conversations with other directors of photography. The idea being, the viewer may benefit from listening in on a conversation between two experienced professionals. You may be able to glean some information you can use in your own career. Matt is a good friend of mine and an amazing DP. If you want to learn more about Matt Porwoll and listen to the full conversation, you can click on the link. Otherwise, here's me and Matt Porwoll yapping about owning equipment.
It's also hard to answer this question with my wife sitting over there because is there anything that I won't buy? She's laughing.
I guess what I wanted to talk about first was I just did this video about buying gear, about buying equipment, and I liked it a lot. I enjoyed doing it, but I also realized it was like really narrow. Like it was not even in my own take of how to buy gear did it. It didn't even cover everything I think about it because it's such a big topic, you know. And someone pointed out to me, I think through Facebook, they said they basically pointed out that I didn't show any scenarios where one shouldn't buy gear, which I think it's pretty telling.
That's how we convince ourselves of
exactly.
it.
I mean, it really is. Like, it is very rare. It's kind of like once I start the conversation with myself, should I buy this thing? It's like, yeah, I'm buying it.
It's already purchased.
It's already purchased. All the rest is justifying it. I mean, there is the odd occasion where I'll look at it and I'll do the math and I'll be like, you know, it just doesn't make sense. But anyway, how do you, when a new piece of equipment comes out, how do you determine whether it's something you should have or shouldn't have?
Same thing. It's like once the seed's planted, if it's not now, it will probably be at some point. But for me, I'm like you. I have way too much stuff. And I also never sell stuff, which is frustrating. So it just keeps accumulating. But then there's always those instances where it's like, oh, I still have that. This is perfect for this job.
Right.
And that's why I never get rid of anything, but that's also why I buy everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, part of it is an addiction that you shouldn't influence and you shouldn't suggest people to do. But on the other hand, there is something really nice about and an added value to productions to be able to bring what's needed and not have to go out and hire a PA to pick something up at a rental house and transport it and all that stuff. And so for me, I like showing up with my own stuff. So that's a big motivator of what I'm going to buy. But obviously, it also needs to make some money. It needs to pay for itself at the very least, if not make more. So that's kind of I think the biggest factor is just, I have a whole spreadsheet of every piece of equipment that I've purchased, what the purchase date was, what the the value at that time was, kind of variables to figure out on average how many days are things being paid off from lenses to monitors to cameras. And if there's something that I feel like I need for an upcoming shoot, I will factor it into that equation, but that is certainly not the end all be all. And then it's just, will this make my life easier? I think that's another big part of it. And so I don't know. I don't think there's really any clear cut way to decide, but there's some things where I expected it to do a lot better, and either it's just now paying itself off after 7-8 years. Mm-hmm. And there's things that I bought that I thought were going to take, 18 months and it was done in 4 months.
Right.
Like you don't really know. And I think that's at the end, they're kind of averaging themselves out. So I don't think you can really look at one piece of gear and say that was a good decision or a bad decision, because it's all a cumulative package that you have.
Right.
So you kind of need to just feel it out and see, is this, I think it goes back to, will this make my life easier?
Right.
And then will I make some money on it? And if the answer is yes, then you're getting your day rate, which is making, you're going to show up whether you have that piece of gear or not. Mm-hmm. But for that day rate, would you like your day to be easier?
Right.
Then it makes sense.
Right.
Would you like to take home more money at the end of the day because you can rent that item? Yes. Either way, it's a win. So, I think that's kind of how to factor it in. But then when to stop, that's a whole different conversation.
So yeah, we're not the right people to talk to about that. No. We're probably someone out there maybe could start like some kind of service, like an intervention service for people like us to like when to stop. Like, you have enough gear, you have enough equipment. I don't know.
I mean, that's probably what this should become. But what I think what would be interesting is for you to talk to somebody who doesn't own gear.
I know.
And that's always, I have a few friends who don't own anything. And I understand the reasons why, because then when you own gear, it's like, I am now more motivated to shoot on this camera and this lens and not try something else out. Whereas you have the complete freedom to do that if you don't own anything. But then you're either the one that's having to go and pick up the gear all the time. You're having to rent stuff from your friends. It becomes logistically complicated. And I would be curious from them now, having done it for many years, like, is it worth it? I don't know. But it's also, it's the same problem of when you get a job and the production company owns gear and they want you to use their gear.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have anything to do with, I mean, certainly having to pick up the equipment is a pain.
Right.
But like, what makes my camera work for me is not the camera. It's all the little pieces that I've accumulated over time. And I've done videos about that, of like, the image quality across the board is fine. It's just ergonomics to me is the most important decision in making that purchase. But if I go to a rental house and get it, it's like, am I having to explain to them every time I want this shoulder pad and this kind of hand grip and all this stuff? And then if they don't have it, it's like, just buy it. And then when you start buying the accessories but not the camera, then it's
that's
like,
really dumb. Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. The production companies owning the gear is really interesting. Like, that is something, it's hard not to get a little annoyed. And like you said, it's not even about like, of course, I want that income, of course. Like, it's like sound mixer. I always think about sound mixers, because sound mixers, basically the business model of being a sound mixer is owning the equipment. Like, every time a production company is like, oh, we own the sound gear, we're just bringing, I'm like, oh, that's not cool. Like, because it's the extreme example of what we're talking about, because they have really dialed in every little piece, but also because of years and years. It's right. It's not really, you're right. But I mean, I also think you just, like, rates are built around, for sound mixers, if you want a really good sound mixer and you're paying their rate minus their gear, they're probably not going to be too interested, right? Because they've built their entire business model around that. It's not like, sometimes I work with my gear, sometimes I don't. Whereas us, like, in theory, like, someone could come to me and say like, oh, we have the gear or whatever, but the rate's good. And it's like, all right, let's do it. It's fine.
Right. And on those days, like, it is actually kind of nice to show up without gear.
Yeah. Oh my God. Especially travel stuff, which is a whole nother, at some point I will talk to you about flying with gear. I think that's a whole thing, but we'll talk about that some other time. But I think, like, once you've flown with like 20 cases of gear, especially, like, I live in Philadelphia, and when I fly out, everyone's meeting me from a different city. So I try not to make a big deal of it to production. So it's just me. I don't like to be like, I need to have an AC or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, I'll do it. And then it's like, oh, every time. And then you get a job that's like, we just need you. We have the gear. And you're like, oh, that sucks. But secretly in the back of your mind, you're just imagining yourself strolling through the airport, like taking an Uber right when you get off the plane, taking an Uber to the hotel. And just
grabbing dinner.
Exactly, grabbing dinner, not having to like throw batteries on charge at night because the AC has all the gear. They're doing it all, That is,
but then
huge.
It's always in the back of your mind. You're like,
yeah. But are they going to have?
That's like half the rate. Like, I'm losing out on half my income.
Half the income, and then also like the endless phone calls. Being a relatively neurotic DP, like I'm constantly harassing the AC about like, are you sure they have this? Are you sure they have? Because, for a very long time, my whole thing was I come from like a long line of accountants in my family. So like I always thought of buying gear as like a fund. Like, oh, if I like put a certain amount of money in a fund and I would sit and calculate out the return on the fund, and I try to compare it to like, and it always, like, on paper through my own spreadsheet magic, it always comes out like much more profitable than if I just put my money in like a Dow Jones, whatever, or, a lot of investments that happen. Like, you're just like, oh yeah, this is great. And then I slowly realized that it's just not like, that's just not what is going on here. Like, we're buying tools for the thing we do. And at the end, the amount of money you make every year is either enough or it isn't. It is kind of interesting. I don't know. I've stopped thinking of it that way, because then what started to happen is I started looking at things like, I don't know if you've run the numbers on how much a battery makes. Like, the return on investment on batteries is amazing. Or like media. And it's like, yeah, but that's not how it works. Like, you're not just going to sit and buy,
No, because you're also not line item renting those things either.
Right. Well, that's my other question is that how do you roughly, I know it's different for every job, but like in an ideal world, do you talk to your client about like, okay, I'm going to send you a list of everything and I'm going to itemize it and we'll have a total? Or do you just say like, let's just say it's this much for the package?
I itemize to a point. So I will have, it's like my camera package is a certain price, and that comes with, I will also throw out the caveat, and I don't know if I should say this, and we'll probably delete this later, but like, you're always throwing in additional stuff based on what the job needs, with the same rate.
Right.
But generally speaking, it's like the camera package is one rate. That's the camera, the tripod, all the batteries, all the media, filters if they're needed, onboard monitors, and then lenses. And at this point, I now only own either a set of primes or cine zooms. And so it includes one of the other. If you want both, then I would separately add the set of primes. Because I feel like there's kind of compartments of the types of jobs you're doing. If I'm doing a verite film, then it's generally just going to be the camera and the lenses. You're not bringing a whole bunch of extra monitors, lighting, all that kind of stuff. So I'll have a camera package rate per camera, and then I'll have a separate lens rate if those are additional. I do itemize my monitors because I do feel like it's so different of, do I need a bunch of client monitors or can I get away with just one? So I do line item those out, and then I just have a kit price for my lighting package. It's generally grouped, but I still do have individual prices for everything.
Right.
And most of that is if I'm renting it out to somebody else, not if I'm coming with it.
Right.
But, I do have what those prices are. I just have to reference them all the time because I never use them.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's the problem. The thing I hate, you probably are in this situation all the time as well, is like when they first call you for a job and you get really excited about it, and then they want to know right away, well, how much will you and your camera be? And I'm always like, I need a minute.
But I'm like, what do you need?
Yeah. I need to think about, right, what do you need? I probably could come up with some rough numbers, but I also just don't keep them in my head. I probably should more, but like, now everything changes so quickly too, even just rates and things. It's like, I just need a minute. I want to find out more about your project first. And then let's talk about like what we need for the job and then what it'll cost and all that. And I don't know.
I also, there's a mentality that I think ultimately pays off. And sometimes you lose jobs because of it, but sometimes you just get the ones that you should have, which is if a producer calls and is asking you, what's your rate with gear? Before they tell you what the project is, what the expectations are, what kind of gear is needed, this is purely a financial transaction.
Right.
You are not being brought in to have add anything to the film,
right,
other than sticking a camera on your shoulder or on sticks.
Right.
I'm not going to say those jobs aren't great to have every once in a while because we all need to get paid, but that's not my first choice.
Right.
So if that's what they first come out of the gate with, then I like to just counter with, I can get you that number, but let's talk about what the project is, and I will get you a number that fits what it is that you're looking for.
Right.
Sometimes giving them the impression that maybe it's cheaper or maybe it's more expensive, but what I don't want to do is lock them in and say, oh, the rate is X for me and gear.
Right.
Or me and a camera. because then that's the number they have in mind. And they're like, oh, great. So here's what we need. And you're like, why didn't you lead with that? Because now it's going to be so much more money.
Yeah.
But then you can't really change it after the fact.
Right.
You know, or it
you
gives
have
them
to,
a bad taste about you. So I'm like, I hear you. Let's just talk about what it is and what you need, and I'll get you that number, you know?
And you're right. It is a good, like, the people who aren't willing to have that conversation with you, it's probably an indication. I think neither you or I are really excited about getting on a job that's just about us showing up with a camera and documenting what they want.
It's a mentality that goes with just anything about rates, is I feel like if you just come right out of the gate and just say it,
right,
then A, they're locking you into it. B, you're removing the conversation around what's required. You know, because sometimes it's like, I can tell you my rate, and if I come right out of the gate with it, if it's too high for what they would think, I'm open to talking about bringing it down.
Right.
Like, I'm not against that. But if I just tell them out of the gate, then they're never going to call me back again because it's too high and they don't think they can negotiate. The same goes for gear. And it's like, if you just take a beat and then hear everything and then send it after the fact, it leaves so much more room open for negotiation and communication, but also just understanding of where this is coming from.
Right. Yeah. Is there particular gear you won't buy? Is there any gear you wouldn't buy, Matt Porwoll? You've got a good lighting kit. You've got the cameras, monitors. I just recently bought the comms. That's something I never thought I would buy. I was like, it seems like people are having them, and it's valuable to have on the set. And that's the perfect example. Like, most jobs I bring those on, I'm not charging them for those. It's just like, I bring them
just
along.
makes your life easier.
Yeah. Unless it's something like the job requires this and we're renting it from somewhere else, I might be like, oh, we'll just rent it from me. You know?
Right.
I don't know. You haven't bought the grip truck yet. You haven't gotten the 2-ton.
That's crossing the line. No, I'm not buying a truck. I mean, well, I would buy a camera van, but I wouldn't buy a grip truck.
Oh, don't do it, man.
I know. I think about you every time that I consider that opportunity.
The day I lost that van, man, that was like the best day of my life. I mean, I love that van to death, but it's an enabler when you have that huge van. It's like having a lot of space in your house or in your storage space. You're going to fill it up with equipment. There's, sometimes you need to have limitations imposed on you.
I think where I would, I mean, I'm not interested in buying really incredibly expensive lenses. As great as it would be, it just, for the kind of work that I do, I'm not going to pay them off. Especially now. I mean, God, there were days thinking back of like when we were at Able and they were just effectively throwing away Zeiss super speeds because nobody was using 35 millimeter lenses. It's like, oh man, should have picked those up then. But, it's like, I'm not going down that road.
Wait, when you left Able, you didn't take I took a bunch of Zeiss lenses. I just was like, last day on the job, I just took the little cardboard box and put I just put my pencil holder on top of them.
They'll never know.
They'll never know. Pete and Rich aren't going to watch this. It's fine. Yeah, expensive lenses, I agree.
Expensive lenses. And then like there's a tier of lighting that I'm not interested in. I mean, I would love to have them, but again, it's like, that's one of those things that I'm always tempted to buy more lights. But then I also realize, well, then it means to use those, I'm going to need a gaffer and at least a grip or two. And it's like, then why not just have them bring the gear?
Right.
You know? And the lighting stuff doesn't rent for as much as I would like it to be able to pay it off.
Right.
So it's like, I've got the kit that can get most things done and I can roll up in my car with it. But beyond that.
Right. That's where I draw the line on lighting. I'm like, well, if this is something, because I'm using this piece of equipment, I need to hire like, oh, we have to have a gaffer if I have an 18K shooting through the window. We're going to need a generator. I'm not buying an 18K, but I mean, there's things closer to my world that I still wouldn't do. But I'm like, I have the amount of equipment that I could do with the help of a camera assistant or, a good small crew. But if it requires a gaffer, then I'm not buying it, in theory.
Right. I will say the one thing that I didn't think that I would invest any more in that I did a little bit is sound.
Yeah.
Just because I think, it's funny. I feel like I was having to do sound myself more and more earlier on, and hasn't been as much of a thing. But when it does become one, it's like I actually want it to be more functional,
right?
As opposed to just running everything into the camera, which is a pain. It's like I now have a mixer that I can wear, on my belt.
Right. Oh, wow.
More lavs, able to send hops and that kind of stuff. But that's one of those things too, that it's like, nobody cares that I have it. It's just making my life easier.
Right. Right. And it's not, and you're probably not itemizing that mixer on your invoice. You're probably saying my sound kit, or no?
My sound kit.
Yeah,
exactly. However many lavs you need, if I own them, I will bring them as part of that kit.
Right. The budget thing is an interest. That might be a whole other thing. Because I went down that road for a while where I was like, I'm going to learn how you budget a documentary, and I'm going to try. And I realized it just doesn't. It's a fool's errand. And probably if they actually trusted me with that stuff, I would not want to do it. I don't want to have that responsibility of knowing the whole, because I used to be like, well, tell me the whole, but like, tell me what do you have in your budget lines for everything, camera and lighting? Because if you say like, we can't use this lens or these lenses, but then later you have budgeted like a jib arm, and I know we're not going to need that. Like maybe we can, maybe I know where we can put the money, and they're very suspicious. This is especially documentary television. They just don't trust you at all.
That's like the fiction world's thing.
Yeah, their model is this is a $10 million film. Yeah.
And we trade the money. You can't have this, but you can get this if you lose that.
I know. Yeah,
I would do the same thing.
Exactly, and I think in documentary, what I've sort of come down to is they're not ever going to tell you. Sometimes they will, if you know the showrunners well enough or the producers. They'll be like, well, it's a X, it's $1 million per episode or whatever, but really. That also just doesn't mean as much as it does in the fiction world, because there might be so many other different things. So you can say, oh, if it's $1 million per episode, I know I can use this. I'll use my $1 million per episode, list of things I want. That doesn't really work that way. But I'm constantly trying to figure out, without trying to sound like, because it gets misconstrued as being like, how much of this money can I get? And it's like, no, I want to figure out what I can ask for this project, and what's totally crazy for me to ask for, because I don't want to waste both our time saying we have to shoot this on Alexa 35 with anamorphics. Like if it's, FX3 with, cheap lenses, and that's fine too. But like, I don't want to end up shooting on FX3 with cheap lenses if it could have been an Alexa 35 with anamorphics, because I found myself in that situation a few times where I'm like, I've worked out this whole package and done all these deals and everything. And then you show up on set and there's there's a video village all of a sudden. And then there's like clients who have been flown in from LA, and you're like, well, wait a minute. And they're like, oh, why didn't you? And then they start looking at me like, well, why do you have this camera and not the other camera? Like, why, You feel like,
or the flip side where and this is where it goes back to like quantity over quality, is you have all these conversations where it's like, oh no, like we really want to shoot this on Alexa 35 with, anamorphic. And then you show up and they're like, oh, well, the assistant can just pick up another camera and shoot something.
Right.
They're like, we don't have another Alexa. They're like, oh no, they'll just use like an FX3 and shoot it. I'm like, then why are we shooting the 8 cam on this other thing?
Right.
Like,
that's not gonna. Yeah. That's
like if it doesn't matter, then let's just reduce all of our expectations. But if it does matter, then let's put the money on the screen, and not just spend it frivolously on other things.
If this is going to be a beautiful looking documentary, let's not do anything.
Let's keep it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got to hang out sometime soon, for real.
We got it. Yeah, let's make it happen.
Awesome.
All right. Well, this was great. Thanks,
all right.
Ben.
Thanks again. All right. Take it easy.
All right. See ya.
Bye. Okay, it seems to have worked. Oh. I'll do a little tail slate for me.